Relative, absolute, and mixed cells will make your life so much easier. In this video, we will explain how to use them and why they are so useful. There are three types of cell references in Excel: relative, absolute, and mixed. This may sound complicated, but they are a simple and very useful concept. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to take full advantage of them. First, start by opening the Chapter 3 workbook and going to the Reference Cells tab. As mentioned in the previous video, I have highlighted the cells in orange where we will be entering data. So first, let's talk about the relative cell reference. When a cell with a relative reference is copied to another cell, the cells being referenced will change based on the relative position of both the cells. This will be much easier to understand with an example. So let's calculate the value for product A in cell D4. This will be the unit price times quantity of product A, so B4 times C4. Now if we double click the fill handle, it will autofill the formulas to D6 like so. You'll notice that the cell references of the formula have now changed relative to the position of the cell. For example, the value in D5 is the multiple of cells B5 and C5, and the value in D6 is the multiple of B6 and C6. This relative reference is very handy to quickly autofill formulas. Now let's move on to the absolute cell references. There are many instances where you might not want the cell references to change. This means that you want to lock a cell when copying formulas to another cell. To create an absolute cell reference, you need to add a $sign before the row and column. You can do this manually, or you can hit F4. I'll now take you through an example of when absolute cell referencing can be useful. We have a bunch of products where we want to apply a tax of 10%, stated in D16. The formula for the tax for product A would be D12, the value, multiplied by the tax rate in D16. Let's enter that with a relative reference for a starter, i.e. no $signs. Now, if we copy this formula down one cell, we can see the formula is not working. This is because of the relative reference, and we are no longer referencing the 10% tax figure. To fix this, we can lock D16 by selecting this cell in the formula bar and hitting F4. Tip: if you hit F4 once, it will lock both the cell and the column. If you hit F4 twice, it will lock just the row only. If you hit F4 3 times, it will lock the column only. And if you hit F4 4 times, it will not lock any cells and go back to relative referencing. Now moving back to the example, we want to lock the cell referencing the tax rate, which is D16. So let's do that now. We can now copy the formula down to the other cells, and you'll notice the tax rate is locked in D16, but the value reference moves down each cell. This shows you a simple example of how useful absolute referencing can be. Now moving on to the mixed cell reference, which is sort of a combination of both a relative and absolute reference. It is where we want to only fix the row or the column. Let me take you through an example. So in this example, we have 3 products and the numbers we've sold during Jan, Feb, and March. In the highlighted cells, we want to calculate the values, which is the price multiplied by the quantity sold during a month. Let's do that for Jan. So we will multiply B24 with D24. Now if we copy this to February, we'll notice that we want to lock the cell to the unit price column. Let's do that now with an absolute reference. You'll see that works for Feb. However, let's try copy that for Jan for product B. You'll notice that we are still referencing the price for product A, which is incorrect. This can be easily solved. Let's go back to the January value, and instead of locking both the column and row, just lock the column by clicking the reference in the formula bar and pressing F4 two more times. Now let's try copying this to all the cells. We can now see that all the correct cells are being referenced and shows you the power of using different cell references within Excel. So in summary, this is a relative reference where the columns and rows will change after being copied. This is an absolute reference where the columns and rows do not change after being copied. This is a mixed reference where the rows do not change after being copied. This is a mixed reference where the columns do not change after being copied.